Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time, a Wave Sports and Entertainment original presented by Prize Picks. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. It is Foxworth Friday, but his kids is on spring break, so somehow he thinks that means he gets spring break too. Anyway, Howard Bryant, Metal Arc Media, ESPN, joining us. How are you, sir?
Good morning. What's happening?
Hey, man, just out here making it happen again. We've had it's been a very interesting week in the sports, and I've been talking about the gambling a little bit more. And it's so funny. Like 2-3 weeks ago, I said something about look, man, a reckoning's coming, right? Like there's going to be some giant scandal involving a star. It's around the corner. And people hit me up after the Otani thing, like, oh, Bomani was right, as though this was some sort of brilliant observation, right? What I basically told you was, it's going to rain one day, right? Like I just told you, there's all these clouds up here. I don't know, guys. Looks like it's going to rain. And then rain came. And some people were looking at me like I was some sort of prophet. But we'll get to Otani. I want to know, did you see what happened with Jontay Porter?
I did. And it was, once again, I was asking myself, when did the National Basketball Association turn into challenger level tennis? I mean, these are the kind of bets that you were getting with dudes not making any money, where the tennis integrity unit had to flag certain matches that nobody was watching, but suddenly there was a whole bunch of action on. And it was once again, it was another one of those examples where it was like, this was bound to happen. Not only bound to happen, but is happening, right? I mean, so it's not even that, oh, one day it's going to rain. It has been raining.
Yes.
Let's not forget Iowa State. Let's not forget the Lions. Let's not forget Calvin Ridley. Brian Bohannon down at Alabama, the baseball coach. It has been raining. We just didn't get the monsoon that we got with Otani.
Yeah. Now, and by the way, on Porter, for those of you who don't know this, Jontay Porter, he is Michael Porter's little brother, right? And so there was a game where, first, I'll go to the closest to the present tense and then work backwards. He got pulled from a game because there's an investigation going on about his play and some prop bets. So it seemed that there was a day where I forget what the numbers were for him on the prop bets, but he come off the bench, right? So all those numbers, I mean, one could argue some of them look like a regular day at the office for Draymond Green. But the point that I'm making is it's 3 singles. It's like 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, some small handful of assists, whatever, right? Okay. I'm also going to be honest with you. I have no concept of his game as a basketball player whatsoever. I don't know how often he's good to put up 7.5 points coming off the bench. But he came out of a game because he said he had some sort of illness. There's some malady. I can't remember if it was I'm not feeling well or I heard something. But he had to come out of the game. And when he came out of the game, he hadn't put up any statistics. So obviously, everybody that bet on the unders on his prop picks, on his prop bets, they won, right? It seems that though more people won betting the under on him than won on any other prop bets the whole day. The biggest winners were the people that bet the under on the day where he said, teacher, I'm real sick.
I don't feel too good.
Yeah, right. So it just happened by that coincidence. Okay. Fast forward. It happens again. He comes out of a game before the under, and it's supposed to be, it would have been the biggest day once again. And so now people are looking at him like, hey, buddy, I don't know what's going on, because for obvious reasons, the house is like, don't nobody give a damn about no Jontay Porter, right? There's no way in the world that this could possibly happen and there not be shenanigans. That's the way that they feel about it. He has now been pulled out. And I asked this question. I don't know what they're going to prove. I know what I see, right? And I know you would not be able to convince me that this was not shenanigans. I don't care what the investigation comes about. He can't play for them no more, can he? Like, forget about the league. I'm just talking about that one team that he bailed on 2 straight times, it looks like.
So now when you walk into the room, what are your teammates thinking when they're looking at you? What do they look like? One, you faked an injury. So gambling or not, that never flies. And then on top of that, you'll never be able to survive the fact that people think you're bought and paid for. right? And if that's the case, what information are you giving up on me? Right? I mean, if these things are true, these are all alleged, it's obviously under investigation, everything. But if these things are indeed happening, then you tainted the whole damn team. Everything is suspicious. And let's not forget that this is happening in a league where all season long, everyone's been talking about the officiating. Everyone, the whole story of this league so far is not the fact that the Boston Celtics have won 57 games and nobody else is going to win 60 this year, probably, unless, Denver gets there. But the story has been the officiating. And so now that you have this, look, what have we been saying ever since the beginning of all of this? The one thing that you've got is the actual integrity of the sport, that you know that this thing is on the level. And you can go back to whether or not, Des Bryant's ball was a catch or not in the playoffs. People are looking at every single play. They're circling stuff. They're suspicious anyway. And now you've given them full reason to be even more suspicious.
And I think this is a bigger concern for basketball than anybody else, because no sport has a credibility issue in the way that basketball has had a credibility issue. And it's not strictly an NBA issue. Like, it becomes an NBA issue because everything about the NBA is always about race, whether people say it out loud or not, right? Like, it always seems to whittle back. You walk it back up the tree and it comes back down to race, because that's what the NBA is, the black league of all the leagues that we have.
They only try hard in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, you name it, right? It all goes back to that. But we've got decades of history of issues, right? Like, you go back to the point shaving scandals of the 40s and the 1950s, Henry Hill and the Boston College situation, right? Tulane in the 1980s. We even had somebody get picked up. We even had somebody get picked up a couple years ago. He was I want to say he was at Auburn, where they supposedly got him on point shaving. But it's so much easier to fix basketball if you so decide. And then you've got all the officiating issues that come up with college basketball in particular. But then you had the Tim Donaghy thing that has come up in every way. And the NBA has decided historically their approach to dealing with things is avoid, because they cannot afford to confront, and they can't afford to confront because they have a credibility problem. But that then doubles back and leads into the credibility problem, where for them, something like Porter, I feel like the league need to come out. They say they investigating. They need to come out, and if they catch them, they got to put the super hammer down. You're never going to play again. It doesn't matter what anybody says. Like, they got to show. David Stern would have been showed somebody that he mean business about something like this. And they better show people that they mean business, because half their players question the credibility of the league when all this stuff comes down. The middle of the year, all of a sudden, y'all calling fouls in ways that you were not, and shut down the whole offense thing that had been going and didn't tell nobody. So, yeah, everybody looked around this league like, hey, dog, I don't really know what it is y'all doing.
And also, on top of that, I remember sitting in the press box when I was covering baseball, and we would just talk about basketball. How do they, George King, New York Post, we sit there and look at each other and go, how do they do it? Like, seriously, when you look, the amount of points that are put up in a basketball game, how do they do it? How do you call the volatility of that sport? The Pistons were up 14 in the second quarter. How do they do it?
Right.
And so that game lends itself to the most suspicion anyway, because there are so many variables. And no matter what sport you're talking about, I don't know. I don't want to rank them. I don't want to make lists, but no matter how you do it, the power of an official in basketball is probably greater, maybe baseball, because you're actually controlling the count, where you're controlling what pitches get thrown because of the count. But in basketball, you only get 6 of these in the NBA, and all of a sudden, once one of your dudes in foul trouble, you're shifting the balance of the whole game. The game moves so quickly. It's like the great soliloquy in if you ever read 8 Men Out, where I think it's Happy Felch is on on trial, and he says, you can run too fast, you can run too slow, and with a professional athlete, nobody can tell the difference except you.
I think, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, like, I think the NBA, on whatever they do, and I think all these leagues on all this stuff, They have to be so transparent, like even at the risk of demonstrating what some things might have been before. If they're going to exist in this world going forward, they've got to be so transparent about all of this. And leagues have felt no inclination to be transparent about anything in a very long time.
And I think I look at it maybe slightly differently. I mean, I agree with you. Of course, they have to be transparent and they have to be as legit as possible, just to avoid this very conversation. Now, obviously, you can avoid this very conversation by having your fourth estate, by having your media be in business with the gambling as well. So there's one way to not have the conversation take place. But my big issue with all of this is the nihilism that we see as a society in general. You did this. And the way that we're going to legislate all of it going forward is we're going to open these doors and you're going to take the fall. It's one of the most anti-labor moves I've seen probably in the history of professional sports and all of them, in sports in general and in society in general, where we're going to release any sort of controls, any sort of regulation. And the way we're going to police this is we're going to take the money and you're going to take the rap. That's how we deal with this now. And that's how we framed it. Well, the leagues have to be transparent. Well, your transparency came when you decided that your sport, the integrity of your own game didn't matter. That's the transparency, is that you open this door for one reason and one reason only. I remember Tony Clark told me a story back, head of the Baseball Players Association, a bunch of years ago, right before the New Jersey law went down. And it was essentially a scene out of The Godfather. And he was telling me that, I think he had a meeting with Major League Baseball and whatever, and they were all talking about the projections, the projections of what this money was going to bring in. There's a lot of money in that white powder, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was the meeting. And essentially the message was everybody's in on this. And if we don't get in on this, we're going to be out. So like it or not, as soon as the Supreme Court passes this bill, everybody's in. And this is the price.
That comparison to that Godfather scene is a lot of money in that white powder, right? And the irony of it is, in The Godfather, they looked at it as gambling. Safe, not that big a deal.
That's right.
But drugs is problems, right?
Drugs is a dirty business.
Right. Now you look up and none of it matters.
That's right.
I'm trying to figure out if there's any, the inflection points on various things where you look up and realize, oh, wait a minute, nothing really matters anymore. I remember
Saudi money.
Yeah, but I remember a little more broadly, right? Thinking about drugs, the Harold and Kumar Christmas movie. And I didn't enjoy it because it wasn't a weed movie like the one that I had enjoyed. In fact, it was a cocaine movie and I couldn't relate to that. And I was like, hey, wait a minute. When did we just start laughing about cocaine? I was watching, what was that Guess Who's Coming to Dinner movie that Eddie Murphy did with Jonah Hill on Netflix. And I watched that, and there's a scene where Jonah Hill and his people, they start snorting blow. And Eddie Murphy, the stick in the middle of dad, ain't really going for that. And the moral of the movie was, hey, so what's the big deal? You were just doing cocaine the other night. And I'm like, hey, that's new. When did we just start, when did that happen? Right. And it just feels this is an extension, I think, the nihilism that you talk about. Hey, does any of it matter to anybody anymore? Does anybody have time to care at this point about anything? I have no idea what it would take to create an actual scandal.
Well, this is what, and exactly, and this is what we have created. This is the whole point, right? In when you have it's the Wild West. It's deregulation, right? None of it matters. Nothing matters. The point of earning or of creating revenue. Then what is the magic formula? What is the NFL perfected since the 1960s? You don't have to care about the game to watch the game. Everyone's been trying to copy that formula for 60 years, and now they've got it. You don't have to care about the game to watch the game. To just be involved, to have that thing on, to have some form of vested interest. It's really not that different from high school basketball. You may not care about basketball, but little Johnny's out there playing, so I'm going to the game.
Right.
In football, of course, it's always the gambling underneath it. Put Jimmy the Greek on the air for a reason. And, back in the 70s and before that. But the big deal with all of this, too, is now everybody gets to do it. And I think there's a quote in this Wall Street Journal story Andrew Beaton wrote about how, I think there's a quote from Tyrese Haliburton in there who says, "I'm just a prop bet now."
That's wild, right? Like is it better or worse? It was one thing when they were kind of animals at the zoo, right? Now they are stocks, right?
Now they're stocks.
They are commodities on the board. They are futures.
And Spencer Dinwiddie was the one who, did he get fined or reprimanded when he was like, I think I'm going to sell myself as a stock when he was with the Nets, remember?
He did.
He's a stock.
Was it Bernie Bickerstaff, JB Bickerstaff, who said that somebody rolled up on him at the crib?
And they've got his phone number.
Yeah, rolled up at the crib at the phone number. I want to say something right now to all you gambling types, right? Because I don't really understand how Ohio gets down, to be perfectly honest. It's as a state, I don't know your laws and everything else. I'm going to just tell you this right now. You ain't going to hear about that story in no Texas. That story you're going to hear about.
Exactly.
Yeah, you'll hear about it. The headline will be dead gambler found on Ime Udoka's front steps. Ime ain't even been there that long, but there's somebody that been there for a minute. Going to lay your ass out.
No doubt. And think about the different directions that this can go in. And it's also, I think the other thing too, which I blame our business in so many ways, because it doesn't even feel like we have a business anymore in some ways when this is as prevalent as it is that you'll even hear people from our business, well, what were we supposed to do? Well, it's all a collective. And this is the last one of the glaciers of keeping people employed.
Yeah.
Who's actually bankrolling these industries?
Yeah.
And I don't, is it a question of greed? Of course it's greed. Of course it's all the things. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at the implications and the volume of it now, what do they say? Small sample size? We've got critical mass now that this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we're operating.
And by the way, Bo, it is that we haven't even mentioned Otani yet.
No, we're going to get there, right? We're going to get there. But
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're operating on the premise, right? Because people have asked me the question. Obviously, they're like, okay, your show is presented by whatever, right? How are you able to do this? Well, one, the facts are the facts. B, there is a recognition. All this money was floating all of this stuff. Like, this is how it works. 3, companies that sponsor this and all of these other shows are operating under a premise that for now, I'm going to have to at least act like I think is valid. And the premise is, oh, you guys can do this responsibly. Because, hey, there are people who just do cocaine on the weekends, right? Like, it is possible for people to handle this responsibly. I get this. The question about legality and everything else goes into some deeper philosophical questions for me. But no, I get the argument to be said that people can handle this, that people can deal with it. If that's what we're rolling with, okay. But it's not just propping up this industry where this money is. You go look at podcasts and YouTube stuff in many different sectors. If men are there, you are going to see one of the logos for one of the gambling or daily fantasy companies. They're all over the place now. Like this, they're not just doing this in sports. This is getting people in wherever they can get them right now.
Yeah, and I would go one step further as for the reason why this is. It's not just that we think you can do this responsibly, and that we feel like it is what it is, and the facts are facts, and all of the different things. It's also one other thing. This isn't journalism, right? Like, we're not approaching these industries or this industry, the podcast industry. It's not presented as objective. It's not presented as watchdog. It's not presented with all of the different journalistic standards that you're supposed to have. And because of that, you can bend the rules. Those rules don't apply to this. So of course you can be sponsored by whatever you want. And so that's the other piece of it where you run into trouble is, are we going to get New York Times bet, Washington Post bet, like that, the actual journalism, the places that sell themselves as 100% journalism. I mean, I'm an employee of ESPN. We have ESPN bet, right? However, I remember when I first started working there in 2007, the very first thing I said to myself was, this is not a journalism company. This is a media company that has a journalism component. Those are not the same thing. And so because of that, it does go back to all of the different things that we were talking about. Take that before the gambling piece. What were we talking about? Well, you're not going to get the real journalism always because your partners, your rights holders. How are you going to do journalism when you're a rights holder of the NBA? So all of these different things have overlapped. The lines of demarcation have been completely blurred. And this is the price. And the question that we've been asking ourselves for years, and more so every single day going forward, is the point you just made. Does any of this matter? And the answer is looking like the answer is no.
That worries me.
and it should. And then I was watching the Miami Open, watching tennis the other day, and who's one of the sponsors back there but the PIF? And so a lot of money in that white powder. At some point, they're going to be able, when these dollars can overwhelm you. And I think the thing that bothers me most about this, when people just shrug their shoulders and go, oh, well, what is this, Ted DiBiase? Everyone's got a price, right? You just sort of roll your eyes. There are other places in the world where you can't be bought. Try buying the Saudis. They can buy you. You can't buy them, right? The United States tried to buy Iran for how many years? And then 1979?
Yeah, they're like, we're not buying. We're out of this business.
That's right. So there are places, no matter how much we may call them animals, no matter how much we may look down our noses at them, you can't buy them because they actually have morals. In some ways, they actually have some form of standard.
To be fair, the reason you can't buy the Saudis, I think, is a little bit less about morals and a little bit more about you don't have that much money.
Well, it's true, but there's also one other. Exactly. No, I don't talk. Yeah, I don't think we're talking about morals when we're talking about the Saudis. I'm talking about there are certain religious baselines as well to some places where not everything is for sale, no matter how messed up we may be. You can't buy everything. You can buy everything here.
Right. Well, like I say, the book I was reading not too long ago that was explaining the idea that, and let me get the title of it right on this book because people have asked me about it. But it made the point that if somebody offered you $10 to jump in the water and save somebody who was drowning, you would not do that for $10. But you would perhaps jump in and save somebody from drowning for absolutely free, right? And there are all the reasons why you would do it for free. But you would not do it for $10. You know what I mean? Right. Like, that's not what it's going to be. There are things that we decide that the money, for whatever reason, is not the bag, is not worth it. We're not going to do that. And sports used to kind of have a bunch of those things. Because when you think about it, a lot of the things that we want in sports are actually some fairly far left-wing ideologies that largely go against the notion and idea of profit maximization, right? Because we think that the purpose of this is about something bigger. It's about something more important.
Well, that's right.
That's the way we look at it. But man, these teams cost too much money now. Like once they sold these teams for these billions of dollars, and these dudes, and I mean this seriously, they have the nerve to buy sports teams and want to make money off of them.
Exactly. That's right. Well, and also, when you were saying this is bigger than sports, of course it's bigger than sports, because look at the relationship between Americans and foreign trade for forever. The trade imbalances in terms of some countries that we trade with have incredible trade protections. We don't have virtually any. You could buy every single thing in this country. Everything.
By the way, the book, Talking to My Daughter About the Economy, A Brief History of Capitalism by Yanis Varoufakis. He's a beast, just in case.
The other Giannis.
Yeah, that is what I've been thinking the whole time in reading
original
this.
Giannis.
The other Giannis. They are both beasts in their own ways. But yes, that one. But at that point, it's like, yeah, if I gave you $10 to jump in the river and save somebody, you wouldn't take it. But there's all kinds of people who'd have done it for free.
No, that's right. And I think that's it's a great example, because it's the little flicker of hope that maybe, there is something to us as good creatures.
Yeah, let's hope. But all right, speaking of all this, let's go sell some stuff. We'll be back on the right time. Prize Picks is the most fun you can have by winning up to 25 times your money. Prize Picks not only makes playing daily fantasy easy, it also makes using responsible gaming tools easy as well. You can set up alerts, limits, timeouts, and more in just a few clicks. Whether it's an alert that lets you know when you have placed a certain amount of entries, limits that cap the number of entries or deposits you can make during a period of time, or timeouts that allow you to take a break from Prize Picks for as long as you need. Prize Picks wants their members to have easy access to the resources required to support their fantasy sports experience, like my producer Sean, who's taking a break from his overs this month to practice responsible gaming. And I see you, Sean. So learn more at prizepicks.com/responsible-gaming or directly in Prize Picks' first in-class member support help center. And make sure you go to prizepicks.com/Bomani and use code Bomani for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/Bomani. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. It's spring break season, which means I'll be traveling to all the places you kids won't go to. Places like Iceland or Hawaii, where I know I'll be free from the chaos and will be able to enjoy myself. Traveling is all about new experiences, and Viator is the perfect app to help you do that. Viator is a website and app where you can book travel experiences like museum tours or get access to great restaurants in new cities. They offer everything from simple tours to extreme adventures. With over 300,000 bookable experiences in 190 countries, there's something for everyone. Plus, Viator's travel experiences have millions of real traveler reviews, so you have the information you need to book the best activities for your trip. When you book a travel experience with Viator, there's always flexibility and support with free cancellation, payment options, and 24/7 service. Download the Viator app now and use code Viator10 for 10% off your first booking in the app. One app, over 300,000 travel experiences you'll remember. Do more with Viator. All right, we're back on the right time. And Howard, you did mention this. We haven't even talked about the thing with Otani. Are they just crossing their fingers and hoping we get too busy to remember that this is going on? Like, do you remember that time that Peyton Manning had some had some AGA sent to his house and they decided it was his wife? And we were just like, oh, okay. We knew there had to be some explanation to keep it going. Wayne Gretzky, if I'm not mistaken, had a very similar, we think he's gambling situation. And then they put it off on his homeboy, who then later got a head coaching job, just to show you how much they thought that mattered and was important in this case. So are they really just betting on us with Otani just being like, oh, we're going to forget that this happened. He don't speak English anyway.
100%. I mean, I think the problem in baseball that you're going to have, there's something about baseball, and in some ways, it's the thing. Let's go back to 2005. March 17, 2005, congressional hearings. Sammy Sosa speaks no English. Mark McGwire is not here to talk about the past. All that stuff. I can't believe it's damn near 20 years ago. But one of the things that they're talking about is was baseball being this moral beacon for the children, right? That this is the sport that is supposed to care about, we have standards. And they're going on, and the players, the sport, they're all just getting destroyed about the irresponsibility of PEDs and what PEDs are doing to the kids and all of it. And I'm sitting behind Bud Selig. And the whole time, every time somebody, one of those congressmen made some comment about the irresponsibility of PEDs in baseball, Bud would turn to one of his associates and go, "What about football?" What about football? And I'm thinking, that's not quite the point, but not a bad point.
Right. I'm not saying you're wrong, dog. I'm just saying we're not talking about that today.
Exactly. What about football? So there's something about baseball where it's like, yeah, maybe we will investigate this to the max, right? Maybe we'll take this as far as it needs to go. There are far less protections. Maybe, say it ain't so, Joe, and Kennesaw Mount Landis and the Black Sox. Maybe that stuff, and Pete Rose, it still matters here in a way that it's never mattered to anybody else. And because of that, maybe it's simply the adversarial nature that baseball has always had with its players. Baseball has been willing to take down its players more than any other sport. Whatever the reason, there is a possibility here where people just keep looking. I mean, if the FBI is involved, people keep looking.
Yeah. Well, I think that's their issue. You're not worried about Woodward or Bernstein right now, fellas. You are worried about the federales.
That's right. And to me, everyone's talking about the comp being Pete Rose. And by the way, Pete Rose is still dirty, right? You're still like, this sort of relativism piece of it is like, well, I bet on a game in 1974, so now I'm clean. No, you're still dirty because of what you did in 1974.
No, people have it so backwards when it comes to the logic on these things, right? And if you want to use this logic about call it Reggie Bush, okay, I might be inclined to hear you, all right? What Pete Rose did in 1989 is as illegal in 2024 as it was then.
That's right.
This dude, I mean, let's look at it this way, okay? Let's just think about it this way. What Pete Rose did was a far worse version of watching Pono on the office Wi-Fi. Yes, it is legal for you to watch Pono on your phone. You can do that, but not here. Pete Rose was not just making bets on the clubhouse phone. He's calling other clubhouses to find out what's going on to then make bets on the clubhouse phone. That's never flying, ever.
Never gonna fly. And on top of that, now the one comp that I will say that I'm not fully formed here, so do not have, all y'all people, Bo, don't have them come at me on Instagram or wherever else they find me. Well, that didn't make no sense. I'm forming this, okay? I'm going to take a little risk here. I'm forming this. Is there a comp to reduction of weed sentences? That now that the rules are here, we're going to go back and say, well, the shit was wrong in the first place. And we're going to take those sentences and we're going to reduce them or wipe them out or take them off the books. That is the only type of comp that would give the Pete Rose argument even a tiny, or not the Pete Rose argument, the gambling argument, a tiny bit of leverage. But I'm not sure yet. I'm not fully formed on this.
I think that comp works if you're talking about gambling in casinos. I think that comp works if you're talking about gambling in other sports. I think that if you're talking about gambling in your own sport, we are in the insider trading world where
100%.
Those people who work those, I don't think people know this, those people who work those jobs at corporations cannot trade the stock of those corporations. So if you got a big time job at Amazon where you have the data, you can't buy Amazon's. You cannot yourself buy and trade Amazon stock by yourself. You can't.
Which, by the way, I will stop you right there and let you know that when I was covering technology back in the day in Silicon Valley for the San Jose Mercury News, we, as reporters, I was a business reporter, we were not allowed to buy stock in any of those companies. But the paper did. We had to put paragraphs in our stories. When we're covering, Apple or 3Com or Cisco Systems or whatever, which, by the way, the San Jose Mercury News has an equity stake. Whoa! So y'all can get rich, but we can't.
Yes. I had never thought about that. Not once. But this Otani thing, man, what kind of dummy do you think I am, man?
That kind of
I don't know what he did do, but I feel very confident saying it ain't this shit they talking about. It wasn't the first story or the second one. Like, to me, that was the best part. The first story sounded like a lie too. They should have rolled that out. Like they started with a lie. They seem to start with a lie. Seem to start with a lie. Then seem to come back with lie number 2. You should have just stuck with lie number 1.
Could y'all come up with something remotely plausible here? So what I was thinking about when I got off track on Pete Rose, that's not the comp to me. The comp is Greg Anderson.
Yes. That's your homeboy Hall of Fame. We there. Mm-hmm. We said we want to give the interpreter, he deserves an award called the AC. That is the homeboy Hall of Fame Lifetime Achievement Award is the AC.
That's right. I mean, and so look, you have a sport that people ridicule on the regular. You started the spring training with see-through pants, okay? You had a lockout last year. You may have a lockout next year. You don't have any stars at the level of LeBron James and of Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and whomever else in the NFL, right? You don't have all of these things. You're coming off, you destroyed a generation two generations of players with PEDs, so you've got some of the best players who are not in the Hall of Fame. You don't have a lot of margin here. Cece Sabathia told me the minute Ohtani showed up, he's the greatest baseball player of all time.
Wow.
I was like, he hasn't even played yet. He goes, he's the greatest baseball player of all time. And I was like, how you figure? He said, because he's a professional athlete. He's doing this at our level. He's dominating on the mound and he's dominating in the batter's box. And none of us have done that since the 7th grade. You know, he's like, some of us did that in like American Legion or Little League, where you pitch and hit and you're the best. He's the greatest player who's ever lived, right? These are the stakes when it comes to this Ohtani thing. And, you know, let's not forget we talk about racism a lot here, but let's not forget about the race class element here of the interpreter and the international player, because if his ass was Dominican, we'd be having a whole different conversation.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I always have felt that Sammy Sosa's explanation for taking that interpreter was an excellent one. I learned English on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
The stakes
I watched telenovelas to learn, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I watched soap operas to learn English.
And not only that, but by the way, the Spanish I know is real slangy too. Like Dominican Spanish is not even the standard Spanish that we're talking about here. Hell no, I'm not going in here.
Put me in a court of law?
Right.
Put me in front of Congress?
Right. With my untested English. I ain't never took an exam. You got to be out of your mind, right? He was absolutely correct about that. But Ohtani and the Japanese guys, and this is something we've talked about for a very long time, they come with interpreters, they're provided interpreters, all these things. When the Latin guys need an interpreter, they go find somebody that work in there, a bullpen coach or whatever it is, to be the person to come in and serve that purpose. You're right. If this was a Dominican dude, we'd be asking for some English. And I feel confident saying, and you tell me if I'm wrong, we knew this. That boy Ichiro spoke English. I saw a video of him saying that once it was in Kansas City, it was as hot as two rats fucking in a wool sock. That's how much English that man knew, right? Something tell me this man know a little more English than he telling us, and we ain't demanding he speak it.
That's right. Well, that was one of the first questions that I'd had with Ohtani in the first place when this thing started was, is his interpreter a UN interpreter, like a professional interpreter, or did you find a dude who spoke some Japanese? Right? They're not, an interpreter is a profession. And so when you're watching that press conference, which, by the way, looked equally dirty because the man took no questions, not a single question.
Yeah, y'all might as well just gave us a no card. He might have just sent us the quotes.
And, he could have done a Zoom. By the way, here's the video. My captors are treating me kindly, right? I mean, he didn't have to be up there if he wasn't going to take any questions. So that was the first question. Is this interpreter a professional interpreter? Because Ohtani's nodding, and I don't know what he's saying. And when, and my man Tim Kirkjian said he looked very, convincing in his convictions. And I'm like, you don't speak Japanese. I have no idea what he was saying. I have no idea what those tics are. I have no idea what looks sincere in a foreign language and what doesn't, because you don't know the intonation.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, we are going to do our very best to protect this man at all times, because the stakes are just too damn high. And so it really does, in some ways, the comp may be a little steroid-ish. Are you willing to take down your best players? Do you really want to know what happened? To me, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about David Stern and Porter. The first thing you got to do is protect your game. At some level, you got to hit him with some sort of suspension for at least just not being smart. I don't know. I mean, when you make that much money, would you notice $4.5 million missing from your account?
Somebody's job is to know. That's the thing. Because keep in mind, when he make all that money, this motherfucker just took this contract and said, I don't want no money. Give me my money later. Right. Like, all I'm saying is somebody's supposed to know by some $5 million. Somebody's supposed to be like, hey, I don't know if you realize this. How we don't find this out till we get to the $5 million? Come on, man. Well,
exactly. Well, and that's what I mean. Who's watching this? And I think that they rely on the fact that nobody's watching anymore. And depending on who talks and how much they talk, and once you get cornered, there's sort of no way out. Let's also not forget that Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco and the rest of those guys that went up there, with the exception of Frank Thomas, did not appear at Congress voluntarily. They got subpoenaed. So depending on how much you want to know, will determine how much we learn. How much does anybody want to know? How much does the FBI want to know? How much does Mizuhara, when is he going to start talking? Is he going? You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of variables here, but if there's one asset that we know baseball wants to protect, it's Shohei Ohtani. Nobody can afford this in that sport. Nobody. The players can't afford it. The game can't afford it. The Dodgers can't afford it. Nobody can afford this.
And in a lot of ways, now that you mentioned that, I hadn't thought about it. Pete Rose was a perfect foil, right? He was no longer a player. He was incredibly famous. He was dead to rights on a classic, like, cardinal sin. The easiest sacrifice to make. Now, of course, we also have to remember this too. Not long after making these decisions, the commissioner died.
Not long after that. And there are many people in Philadelphia who say, let that be a warning to you.
I did not know that.
I mean, serious Pete Rose. I went to Temple, my Philly guys, when I was in Philly when that happened. And this was proof of an injustice. They still ride with Pete.
Up and died. Throw this out there too. And this is something somebody had brought up with me. You talk about people riding with Pete. When I took the job doing radio for the Score in Canada, and my boss at the time was like, look, I've been working in radio for a long time. And this is in Canada, okay? He said, if you want to guarantee to this day that your phone lines catch on fire at a sports radio station, start talking about whether or not Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
That's right.
Watch what happens. That, like, people get super charged up about that. And Bart Giamatti's old academic ass is just like, yeah, whatever. This is obvious. Come on. What are you talking about?
Exactly. This is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. And it was a no-brainer. And then it became even more of a no-brainer because let's also not forget the number of opportunities baseball has given Pete Rose in the 35 years since to just rehab himself. Pete don't rehab. Pete gets worse.
Well, Pete understood fundamentally that, hey, man, once you in on that lie, it's really kind of hard to get out from under that lie. And then he was all in on it. And then he was trying to sell a book. And when he was trying to sell the book, he decided to come clean about the lie. And it did not go at all like he thought it would.
No, it didn't. But, you know, to go back to this, when you think about where this is going, this, once again, you did this. Baseball, you did this. And I think one of the very interesting pieces of all of this is, once again, when I think about money and class and the rest of it, what was the argument when it came to gambling? Well, the players make too much money to risk what they've got. They won't do that. They've got too much at stake. They're so rich they don't need to gamble. What are you talking about?
That's not how this works.
It's not how it works. It's the action. What's the one thing we say about the Michael Jordans and the Larry Birds of this world? Once they retired, there was never going to be anything else to give them that same drive, the same high, that same, like Kobe, like those serious competitors. Do you really think that the only people who gamble are the ones who can't afford to gamble?
Right.
You know, but that was the argument. And so this was the thing where you look at it and you say, well, we can open these doors because our players are so insulated from these temptations because of the salaries we pay them that now we can open these floodgates. And that's just completely either just a straight naive, you know, it's stupid, or it's the silliest logic. It's illogical. There's no logic to it at all. It was, we need this money and we're going to do whatever it takes to get it.
I think something that people need to understand about the world, just the whole world, the big old world, okay? And I think that people and I feel comfortable saying people like me and you, I could be wrong about either of us, but I still think it's a point about me and you. We cannot assume good judgment. Some people have really bad judgment. And if you are a person that knows the difference between a good idea and a bad one when you hear it, you are among the fortunate. Because there's a lot of people, you put a good idea and a bad idea next to each other, one of them that says across the front of it, this is a good idea, and the other one saying, I don't think you should do this, and they'll take the bad idea every single time. There are just some people like that. And this is going to bring them out. You add the prospect of coming up on some cheese, and there you go.
Or maybe you just have a gambling problem.
Right. But that gets us to judgment, right?
But is that a question of judgment? That's just
the question of judgment is getting into it in the first place. So like because their argument is it's stupid of you to gamble if you are participating in these leagues, which is correct. So there's a judgment issue that can take you to the bad idea of getting into the gambling, at which point you find out that you have a problem.
No, that's right. 100%. But I also would go, when you say this applies to us, it applies not even just making the wrong decision every time, just making the wrong decision sometimes.
Some of the time, yes.
Some of the time, do you have a condom? Nah, right? Am I legal right now? I think I can make it home. You know what I'm saying? I only live 2 miles away. Just look at all of these small decisions that have nothing to do with $4.5 million paid out to gamblers. Just the basic small decisions. What's the expiration date on that yogurt? Yeah, I think it should be all right. Seriously, these are the small choices, never mind the big choices. And I think that when you're looking at these big choices, the one thing I'll also say about this, Bo, is name me an example in American society where you have been encouraged to take less. If you got a chance to make 20 million, even if you have 10.
You mean outside of being encouraged to do this by the people that wanted to give me the less?
That's right.
Yeah.
Outside of the people asking you to take less.
I was about to say, where I worked for a while. Outside of that, no, I do not.
No, we have geared, and not only that, but we have geared everyone into thinking if you don't go to get more, there's something wrong with you, even if you've got the money. Example, well, get rich or die trying. 2, one of my all-time favorite interviews was essentially like a 2-question interview. Actually, it was when Jason Giambi turned down 6 years, $113 million from the Oakland A's, and instead took 7 years, $120 million from the New York Yankees. And I said to Jason, you're happy here. You want to be here. What is the difference between $113 million and $120 million at your level? And what did he say to me, Bo?
$7 million.
$7 million. And I felt like the idiot for asking the question. Why you got your hand in that man's pocket?
He did live in the Bay, so it's not like he was really going to be saving by staying. I was going to try to use that rationalization. He was like,
he was not in Kansas City.
Yeah, he was like, $7 million, Howard. I'm not a stupid baseball player. I can count, right? $7 million. And I'm like, touche, and walked away. And then years later, after he took the 120 and was miserable in New York, Jason, who's one of my all-time favorites, if not my favorite player I've ever had to cover, G was like, I don't know if I like it around here because New York's a different beast. That $7 million was comfort money. Yes.
Put it in your back pocket and stay in the Bay.
Hey, remember that time where he said he just lost a couple of pounds because he cleaned up his diet? You remember that? Yeah. Just cleaned up his diet, just ate a little bit better, and stop taking the drugs.
One of my all-time favorite people. Love Jason Giambi. Like I always say, there are some people who make this job easy, and there are some people who make this job hard. And he always made it easy. But that's the point. So everything that we've talked about, where is the example where you're going to place those governors on yourself because gambling's a bad idea?
Right.
Because you could actually make that same argument to the people in the suits in the boardroom. Maybe this is a bad idea. Nah, we'll make it work.
I want to ask you this one last thing before we go, because you up there in Massachusetts. How are the Celtics going to blow this? You don't feel good about this. I know you don't feel good about this. You haven't even told me you don't feel good about this, but I know you don't feel good about this. And I know you don't feel good about this because there's still dudes who chuck a bunch of threes and just happen to make a lot of them. And I know you don't feel good about that.
the most perplexing basketball year I've ever watched in all the years I've been watching the Boston Celtics, all the way back to 1976, right? Completely perplexing. They're killing everybody. Like my man Kev, my boy in Philly, when the Philadelphia Phillies in 2008 were going to go to the World Series, and I kept telling him, I was like, they're the best team. Will you take all this historical garbage and put it in your back pocket? And I said, think like a winner. And of course, the Phillies go out and win the World Series that year. This is the same feeling in Boston right now, right? By every metric, by every measure, they're killing everybody. They're beating teams by damn near 12 points a game, right? The only team that you really look at who's beaten them twice, but both of those games, is Denver. Denver's the one team where you could go, okay, the season's not a failure if you lose in the finals to Denver. But by every other metric, this is the best team in basketball. It's not even really that close. You should think like a winner if you're in Boston. There's no real reason to go, okay, they're going to blow this, except I don't really believe this yet. For all the reasons you said, and also because this team hasn't done it. The most interesting thing about this, from a Celtics standpoint, from the great history of the Boston Celtics, is that for the first time since they became champions in 1957, this is the first period the Celtics have ever been in where they have to win. Where you look at them and go, okay, y'all have been to the Eastern Conference Finals and the Finals since 2017. You've been to 5 Eastern Conference Finals and you've been to 1 final. You had a 2-1 lead at home and didn't win another game. You lost to an 8 seed last year. You lost 3 home games. You're 12-15 in your last 27 home playoff games. You got 2 stars who haven't quite gotten over the hump yet. And right now, your comp, if we're being honest, is probably the 49ers right now. When are y'all going to get over the hump? So for the first time in history with this franchise, they're feeling the pressure of, we're the Boston Celtics, we have to win. So none of this matters until we get to June. We'll see.
I can't wait because you're going to be so miserable. I just want Celtics Knicks in the second round.
Same.
Because the Knicks are coming to bang. I just want to see it because the Knicks are coming to bang. The Celtics are coming to shoot. The Knicks are coming to bang.
That's right. And why did the Celtics lose last year? Because Miami was tougher. And what we're really talking about when you say how are the Celtics going to blow this, the real question with them is, are you tough enough to be champions? And right now, the answer has been no.
Who's coming to bang? And might they catch Miami in the first round?
Well, in that one, I say think like a winner. You're better than Miami. Go beat their asses.
But they coming to bang. They coming to bang. That's all I'm saying is these dudes are... I feel like the best teams that they'll have to play against know if we come to bang, we got a chance. Like Cleveland's the one that don't want it because Cleveland ain't coming to bang. They just not like that. They got a lot of tall
men. Haliburton's not the same player after the All-Star break with Indiana because they were really good first half. I was like, this is a good team.
Then things change. I need to be careful. We don't have an official word that they changed the officiating, but when it started to feel like the officiating changed, everything was different. Haliburton's having an all-time great season coming in. Oklahoma City's going to have that same problem where Shea was having an all-time great season, and now all that stuff that he pulls, all this right here, that ain't really gonna work no more. It ain't there. But I've said this, and we don't have that much time to get into it. But I don't know why we acting like we don't know who gonna win this. I just don't know how much clearer it can possibly be. The champs be the champs. The champs be the champs. They are nobody stopping that dude, man. Like, what's gonna happen if he's got back-to-back championships and 3 MVPs? Because I think he's gonna get the MVP this year. We're gonna have to really figure out a lot of stuff about what we gonna say about this dude.
No argument, And the Celtics are trying to do something that no team in the history of the sport has ever done. You're going to lead the league in 3-point attempts and be last in 2-point attempts and win a championship.
Yeah.
No one's ever done that. Now, maybe we're just in a different era and they're going to be the first because somebody's always got to be first. But that is not a playoff formula. And that's why I'm really interested in seeing what the officiating looks like, because how are you going to win going to the line 11 times a game or 12 times a game? It's very, very difficult to do because you got to shoot your way into it. You shoot your way out of it. And the other thing that it does, too, is now because there are no fouls, there's no foul trouble. So your best players are playing the whole game.
That's true. That's true. I got you Bert clipped over there about them Celtics, boy. Your face went to a whole place. You weren't nearly as Bert clipped about the fate of the world and all this nihilism we was talking about. I threw the Celtics out there and you wasn't expecting it and you couldn't help but get there.
There we go. Exposed. Where are you from? 617. What you gonna do?
My favorite part is when Boston people throw out that area code like any of us have ever called y'all. Don't nobody know the area code in Boston. Y'all don't go nowhere. Y'all just be calling each other. I bet Boston got a lower percentage of, well, I guess these things don't exist anymore, but they used to probably have the lowest percentage of long distance phone calls in America.
That's right.
None going in, none going out.
Where are you going? Nowhere.
That is Howard Bryant. Check him out. Meadowlark Media, ESPN. My man, I appreciate you.
Oh, man, my pleasure. I'm sure we'll talk again in June.
Oh, yes. Oh, we'll probably do it sooner than that, my man. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. Remember, hit our voicemail line, 323-596-7767. 323-596-7767. That Beyonce record dropping today. Tell us about somebody in your family that's just way too big a fan of some artist and the crazy thing they do. It doesn't have to be Beyonce. It might be Luther Vandross. 323-596-7767. We do this thing 3 times a week. Sean, you handles everything behind the scenes. Thank you, my man. Remember, follow The Right Time. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. We'll talk to you guys in a couple of days. Take it easy.